Hello, basketball fans and fans of 330 to go. Sam Amico here with another Hoops Wire Live. Cavaliers made a trade. I think that's what, based on the comments I get on my Facebook page, and I'm sure 330 to go, I've been checking their Cavs posts and news, and I see that leading up to the NBA trade deadline, you were all clamoring for a quality small forward, wing defender, and a guy who can score for the Cavaliers, and they went out and got him. There are a lot of layers here for me to unpack, but I think let's start with the basics. The Cavs got DeAndre Hunter from the Atlanta Hawks, who this year has made a living as a Cavs killer. So if you can't beat him, get him to join you, right? But the two games that the Cavs lost to the Hawks, think about this. The Cavs are 41-10, and two of the games they lost to the Hawks, who are maybe a playoff team, but maybe not. So, and yet the Hawks beat the Cavs twice, beat the Boston Celtics twice in Boston, and then beat the New York Knicks in New York. So they're beating all these contenders, but they themselves are not a contender. DeAndre Hunter, fantastic player. Having a career season, is a candidate for NBA Sixth Man of the Year. An actual award, for those of you who don't follow the NBA very closely, that's what he is. They give out an award for the league's best sixth man. He is a longtime starter. Well, not long time. I guess he's been in the league, 5 years. Ty Jerome's best friend. He and Ty Jerome won a national championship together at the University of Virginia, fittingly named the Cavaliers, and they've been super tight ever since. So the former college teammates, both invaluable to the Cavaliers bench. So I'm assuming DeAndre Hunter is going to come off the bench. This is not any inside information, or this is, Kobe Altman didn't reach out to me after the trade and say, hey, just so your fans on 330 to go know, this is what we're going to do. This is just my assumption. And I'm sure he will start as a Cavalier coming off the bench. Maybe that changes. The Cavs have used a lot of people, Coach Kenny Atkinson, in that small forward spot. Some because of injuries, others just because you're trying to find the good fit or the good matchup. I mean, you think about it, Max Strus, Caris, LeVert, Dean Wade, Isaac Okoro, even Sam Merrill started a game at small forward. So, they've been using that. To me, it looks like Max Strus is going to be your starter there, as he was last season with DeAndre Hunter serving in the six-man role that he served in Atlanta. And guess what? He is the leading reserve when it comes to shooting percentage and a couple other stats. Steals. That's a big one. Steals. Because he's averaging like 19 points a game, right? Probably not going to do that in Cleveland. Could, but I doubt it. He's just not going to get the same amount of shots in Cleveland that he got in Atlanta. His, the nice thing about him is when he does get shots, he has a high conversion rate. But, as I joked yesterday, I went on actually an Atlanta television station yesterday, a news station down there after the trade, and they were asking me about DeAndre Hunter, and they said, how many shots do you think he'll get a game in Cleveland? Because he got, 15 here in Atlanta, and I said 8 to 10. I mean, you've got Donovan Mitchell, you've got Darius Garland, you've got Evan Mobley. Okay? There's the bulk of your shots. Then you've got the likes of Ty Jerome, Max Strus. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody in there. Sam Merrill only takes like 4 shots a game. So, and Isaac Okoro and Dean Wade, when they come back, DeAndre Hunter's not going to get the same amount of shot attempts in Cleveland that he got in Atlanta most nights. But that aside, that's irrelevant. The only person that might matter to, and I doubt it, is DeAndre Hunter. I'm sure that he's thrilled. I've gotten indications that he's thrilled with the trade, and why wouldn't you be? You're coming to a true contender who you could potentially put him over the top. By the way, I don't know if you guys have seen the video that's circulating of DeAndre Hunter. I think it was earlier this season, if not last year. I think it was this year, dunking over 7'4" Victor Wembanyama of the Spurs. And I saw it yesterday and I was like, wow. He just drove the basket and dunked right on a 7'4" guy who is a pretty good shot blocker. So he brings that element. He brings that athleticism. He's really, like I said, he's having a career season. Both games, all 3 games against the Cavs, he killed them. When he come off the bench, I'm like, oh no, Cavs are in trouble now. That was my first thought. The thing you really like about him too, aside from all that, the guy can score. He's got a high shooting percentage, which in Kenny Atkinson's offense, obviously very, very important. He's going to get a lot of good looks at the basket because of the Cavs offense. The thing you really like about him, though, aside from all those things, is his defense. The Cavs now have a guy with size on the wing who theoretically can defend the Jason Tatums and help in that area, and Jaylen Browns of the world, where, I mean, fans and readers have been saying to me for a year, the Cavs need to get some size on the wing and get somebody who can help defend these players. Well, frankly, you got a guy who should be a lot of people don't view DeAndre Hunter this way, but he's a borderline all-star, the season he's having. So, look, the Cavs are 41-10, right? Best record in the NBA. They just got a guy who could take them to another level without really giving up much. I'll get into that in a minute. But, to me, this was another excellent move by Kobe Altman. I was talking to GM of another team off the record, and they were talking about some of the guys they may sign. The Ben Simmons, we've heard that rumor. It's on hoopswire.com. People are, that's a very kind of, people are arguing. You're either for Ben Simmons or totally for him or totally against him. And people seem to be very passionate in their comments about whether they want him or not. My view is this, and I was talking to another GM off the record, and I said, boy, I don't know what to think about Ben Simmons. Obviously very polarizing NBA player. Has had a lot of issues. He can't shoot. And when I say a lot of issues, I mean health, back. His back has been seemingly problem on and off for the last 2 years. Didn't really have great relationships with a lot of teammates. And I don't even think it's because he's difficult. I just think that he's kind of quiet and standoffish. I think that's changed. Sometimes guys, NBA players or regular people such as ourselves, they just mature as they get older, right? And when you're in different situations, you learn from them. So he's not a bad guy. I don't want to give that message. It's just Ben Simmons is very, he's been kind of a disappointment for the last, probably a massive disappointment for the last 7, 8, maybe not that long, last 4 or 5 years. And he's had a lot of health issues with his back. He's had all kinds of surgeries and all kinds of stuff. So I brought this up to this opposing GM, and I said, Ben Simmons, I don't know if that's right for the Cavs. Maybe they need to go in a different direction. And he's meeting with the Cavs probably as we speak. He's meeting with the Cavs and the Clippers. These are Zoom meetings. The Rockets, I've heard of several others, the Dallas Mavericks, which, these are all places that he's going to figure out where he's the best fit, and then he's going to work on finalize his buyout with the Brooklyn Nets. When I brought this up to the GM, I keep burying the lead here, and, it's my little cliffhanger. because if my looks alone don't keep you riveted, I throw out these little cliffhangers. But the opposing GM said, when I said, I don't know if I really am big on Ben Simmons coming to the Cavs, the GM said, Kobe Altman just made an amazing trade. Right? They got the guy they needed. They're 41-10. He hired the right coach. So you can be sure if they sign Ben Simmons, it's because the GM of the Cavs, president of basketball operations, Kobe Altman, knows what he's doing. Okay? People still love to doubt the front office, even though the Cavs are 41-10. If they don't sign Ben Simmons, this GM added, you can be sure it's because the president of basketball operations of the Cleveland Cavaliers knows what he's doing. He's made a fantastic trade at the trade deadline when most people, including some doofus on 3-3-0 to go, said they probably wouldn't be able to do. He's gotten the Cavs, while making that trade, under the luxury tax, which is a huge deal in the NBA. If you go over the second apron of the luxury tax, as I've explained on here before, financially, you basically can't make any other moves. They were over that luxury tax line. By making this trade, not only did they get a borderline all-star and fill a need, but they got under that tax. So if the Cavs sign Ben Simmons, I'm going to trust that Kobe Altman knows what he's doing and he believes it's the right thing to do for their 41-10 team. Okay? That's where I stand on that. And I think that's probably a fair thing to think about Kobe Altman right now. And the front office and the organization. They know what they're doing. So if they sign a guy, regardless, if they don't sign Ben Simmons and they go out and get, and you got to be a diehard probably to know this name, but I think it's a possibility. Daniel Tice, who was just cut by the New Orleans Pelicans, who's a journeyman. He's a rugged, rough and tumble backup center who can, he's not going to score a ton, but he can score. And I say this with a great amount of respect for Tristan Thompson, but he's definitely better offensively than Tristan Thompson. Let's put it that way. And he's the kind of guy who's super physical and is super irritating to opponents. The Cavs kind of need a big guy like that. Ben Simmons, let's go back to him for a second. Can't shoot. We know that. Cavs won't need him to shoot. Again, they have Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, Max Strus, Jared Allen even getting 10, 11 shots a game. Now they have DeAndre Hunter. You have Ty Jerome. You have Sam Merrill. And I know there's another gun off the bench who I keep forgetting. But you don't need Ben Simmons to come here and shoot. He's a 6'10" guy who in Cleveland could facilitate from the power forward spot. An excellent rebounder. And an excellent wing defender. Cavs don't need more points. They didn't need them even before DeAndre Hunter got to Cleveland. Offense has not been an issue. The one game against Boston, it was a little bit of an issue, but you're going to have those nights. They've shot 28% or something on threes. When they do that, they don't win those games. But that's been an aberration, The key is to be able to defend the way you need to defend, and that's where DeAndre Hunter really comes in. So, I know I'm sort of rambling, not giving you answers on who the Cavs may sign next, but I believe that they are going to try to sign somebody. It may not be a splash. It could be Ben Simmons. I don't know how I feel about that, but again, I'll tell you this. If the Cavs do it, I believe it. I'm fine with it. This is an organization that knows what they're doing. So if Ben Simmons signs in Cleveland, it's because he's been properly vetted, interviewed, and told what his role will be. and he's accepted that because he has other options. So if he signs in Cleveland, they're not going to lie to him and say, and fawn all over him. They're going to say, look, you're getting a buyout for a reason. Because the Brooklyn Nets are going to pay you to go away. So, in fact, they probably pay part of your salary to come here. They're paying you to play for us. So now is the time for you. Here's what we would want from you. And if Ben Simmons accepts that, then yeah, sign him. We need you to defend. We need you to rebound. And we need you to be part of what we believe is a championship contender. And we don't just believe it. So far, we're 41-10. And we got to get past the Boston Celtics. You can help us do that. And you know what? I don't think Boston's any sure bet either. Got routed, run off their floor last night by the Dallas Mavericks, who didn't have Anthony Davis playing yet. They were down 27 in Boston last night to the Dallas Mavericks. So think about this. The Cavs played Dallas Mavericks, Sunday afternoon? And I know it was Sunday afternoon because another writer and myself were saying, you know what, they should just start all games at 3:30, like even on a Friday or a Tuesday, because then we get out of there earlier. But they played Sunday afternoon against the Dallas Mavericks Cavs. They were up 53 points at one point in that game. Then, granted, Dallas did not have Kyrie Irving that game either, or Daniel Gafford, who's their starting center. So against the Cavs, they didn't have either of those players. Then the Cavs lose to the Celtics. Then the Mavericks and Celtics play on Thursday night, in a finals rematch. Obviously, no Luka Doncic. And the Mavericks go up 27 in Boston. Just ran them off the floor. That's why I say don't get too high or too low with losses or wins. Because this is the NBA and weird stuff happens every night. Just me showing up to a game is weird stuff enough, Like, look at that weird guy. Weird stuff happens every night in the NBA, and Amico is living proof. But I think that's something to keep in mind is I'm not guaranteeing Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. I had a GM tell me if they run into Orlando in the first round and Orlando's healthy, I'm betting on Boston going on vacation. They don't match up well with the Magic. They certainly don't match up well with the Hawks. What if Boston's number 2 seed and Atlanta's number 7? They play in the first round. I would pick Boston, but they have not been able to beat Atlanta. They really struggle with Trae Young. Now that Atlanta traded DeAndre Hunter to the Cavaliers, that may change. Okay, so here, listen. I've talked about this till I'm blue in the face, or at least have talked about it till I have a bluish purple background. And I think that the bottom line is the Cavs get an A here. A++, right? I remember when in fourth grade, the teacher would give out an A++. I see it on my, the other students' papers while I looked at my C-. But that's what the Cavs get, an A++. And I think that, by the way, Cavs, if you're watching this live, playing at Washington tonight, number one question on people's minds to me, is DeAndre Hunter going to play tonight? It's a fair question. I understand it. I doubt it. I really doubt it. I mean, it's not like NBA 2K where it's like you trade for a guy and it's like, well, he's on the team, without meeting any of his teammates. Or sometimes it happens that way in the NBA. Very rarely. But logistically, it's almost impossible for a guy to play the next night. These guys are thinking about moving. They have families. They're thinking about schools. They got to have a day to kind of, most times. I've seen a lot of single NBA players who it's like, yeah, I want to play tomorrow. And they'll play him for 5 minutes. But if you were, I don't think DeAndre, his debut would be more likely Monday in Cleveland after he gets a practice in him, gets to know his teammates, says hello to the GM, and the coach and more than just hello. Think about when you're starting a new job. You get a 2-week notice usually, right? Now that's to help out your previous employer find somebody, but for the most part, you need those couple of weeks to start the new gig, or even a week. You know what I mean? You don't just say, I'm working at, I don't want to name anybody because I don't want to make any sponsors mad. But I'm working at random paint company. I'm starting at a new paint company. I just got hired by a new paint company. Do you want to start tomorrow? Do you want to come in and be productive tomorrow? Or do you want to come in, gradually meet people, say hello, have a small orientation? Some guys say, no, let me go play. It's basketball. But I'm sure the Cavs are saying, we would like you to go about this the normal way. And so that was a really long-winded way of saying I doubt DeAndre Hunter plays against the Wizards. He doesn't know the plays. There's just too much working against it. Because contrary to popular belief, these guys are actual regular humans, so they have to do human things most of the time. You don't get traded one day and play in a game next, usually. So that all that covered, Cavs get an A+. They will probably try to make another move. I don't think that it's, I thought, and somebody told me this, if they don't make another move, that's fine. Before the DeAndre Hunter trade, another GM, or no, I'm sorry, it was Scout, when I was talking to him at a Cavs game. He was like, they don't make another move, they're fine. They're fine. They could win it all right now with this group. Don't listen to the narratives about them losing to the Celtics in February. With this group, they could win it all. And that's what that scout told me. He's like, Boston's no sure bet. They may not even face Boston in the playoffs. Maybe the Knicks. Maybe Orlando gets there. The Indiana Pacers got to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. You don't know who or how the Cavaliers are going to fare or face in April and May. We don't know. We always draw these big statements and big conclusions. Well, they got to do this to get over the top. We don't even know who they're going to be playing. Yes, Boston is the team to beat. Doesn't mean they're going to be the team to beat in May. God, heaven forbid. What if there's injuries to Porzingis or Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum or Derek White, who can't make a shot against any other NBA team but the Cavaliers? So we get a lot of worked up about a lot of things in the regular season that we have no clue what's going to happen in reality, because you can't predict which teams are, you have a pretty good idea if teams stay healthy, who's going to be there. Boston's been very up and down this year. Now, I think part of that is they don't care that much about the regular season. But they better care about the playoffs. Sometimes you can't flip that switch. I had a scout tell me he thought the Celtics were frauds. I never say that or print it because I don't want to motivate them. But, yeah, he said, I think they're one and done. Now, I don't know that I totally agree with that, because when Derek White is hitting shots, and Kristaps Porzingis has been a fantastic player for them when he's healthy at 7'2" or 3, that he's very difficult to defend and really gives them great protection at the basket that they need. So, all that analysis aside, when we're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers, what a great trade. Awesome trade. Guys should fit right in. If they need him to come off the bench, clearly he's got the attitude to do it. He probably wants to, because he is your front runner for NBA Sixth Man of the Year. He probably wants that award. Everything I've heard, he has made it clear to the Cavs, whatever you need. If I need to start, if I need to come up with whatever you know, that's what happens when guys come to a winning organization. Whatever you need. It's like the opposite of the Cleveland Browns. You know, guys come to the Cleveland Browns and are like, you know, not real thrilled. These guys are thrilled. DeAndre Hunter's thrilled. Okay. Time for a little personal reflection to wrap this up. Obviously, by the way, since we last had a show, Luka Doncic to the Lakers. I'm sure you guys have heard way too much about that. I don't get that at all. If you're the Dallas Mavericks, I do not get that. I mean, if you wanted to trade one of the three best players in the NBA, I mean, I don't think he's Jokic, but he's probably like right up there with Antetokounmpo. You know? I don't get it. I don't get it. Why you would trade Luka Doncic and get Anthony Davis, who's a top 10-ish player, right? Great defender, can score. I mean, he's a great player. But without LeBron on the floor in Los Angeles, the Lakers look like Anthony Davis Pelicans teams, like they weren't going anywhere. And he's going to be 32 in March, which in NBA years is like 46. Especially when you break down as much as Anthony Davis has done throughout his career. Great player, not worth Luka Doncic. And Dallas barely got anything else. I don't know how that happened. How did you not get like an Austin Reeves or Hachimura or like 7 draft picks? I don't know what that was and why that is. And people are like, well, Luka was not, he's not a good defender and he doesn't, he's out of shape a lot. His conditioning is in question. I'm like, he averages 30 points and 10 assists and like 8 rebounds. Who cares if he's in shape? Give him another cheeseburger. Maybe he'll get 40 tonight. Who cares? People get caught up in narratives. It's what you do on the court when it means the most. And Luka Doncic led them to the NBA Finals. There were some swift moves in there, some good moves in there. So I'll give their GM credit for last year's trade deadline when he got Daniel Gafford, their center, PJ Washington, their starting power forward. Kyrie Irving's been playing very well for them when healthy. So now you have Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis. You're talking about two guys who are always hurt. These are going to be the cornerstones of your team. Klay Thompson's out there still running around. I mean, you've got a team that in 2016 would have been dynamite. But, talking 2015 now, even in 2019, that team would be like, oh my gosh, Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, and Anthony Davis, they're winning it all. Now you're like, can they get out of the second round? I doubt it. But anyway, so that was a crazy trade to me. And I'm not special there. I mean, I walked around the Cavs locker room, was asking them, Evan Mobley, I asked him, and Evan Mobley's not, as you can see, a very emotional guy. And I said, so what did you think about that trade? And he said, I woke up in the morning, saw it on my phone. I'm like, what? This isn't real. And he said he's scrolling and scrolling. And he thought, boy, everybody bought this fake tweet. And then he realized it was real. And I think a lot of people thought that way. It's funny. It was Saturday night at midnight, and we let the 8-year-old, I let him stay up later on the weekends. So don't judge me as a parent. But I was trying at that point, like, you need to get to bed. One of those rare moments when Sam Amico is assertive and nobody buys it. But it's time for bed, Number one, it's way too late for you. And number two, I'm done with you. I've had a full day. I want some time to myself. Well, as soon as I was having this conversation, that's when the trade broke. I'm like, you know what? Just forget it. Stay up. I've got stuff to do. I don't have time to, fight with you right now. So, yeah, I was up till 3 a.m. that night, Saturday night. Don't worry, my child was not. He eventually went to sleep on his own as I ignored him. But the next day he got me up at, I think it was 7:30. So yeah, that's the rough and tumble life of an NBA sports writer. 4 hours of sleep. At least one with a 9-year-old who will wake you up at 7:30 because they're ready for Apple Jacks. Anyway, so all that aside, I will miss Caris, LeVert, and George Niang. And look, they both wonderful guys. Caris, more quiet, keep to himself. But, a couple weeks in the locker room, I thought, I wonder what would happen if I tried to strike up a conversation with Caris. Because he's so quiet. And he was great. You know what I said? Hey, Caris, I really like that sweater. Where'd you get that? And he was like, oh, thanks. And talked to me about where he got it and everything. And I did. I actually did like the sweater. It was because somebody else pointed it out. I was like, I'm just going to tell him. So, a really good guy. So, when I talk about George Niang, I don't mean to, make it sound like I wasn't as big on Caris, because you really were. Caris has not been very good since he's come back from his wrist injury. Maybe the injury's still lingering. That's exactly right, Anthony Bell. Need an athletic wing, and now we got it. And that's what everybody was saying before the trade deadline. I didn't know that they would be able to actually do it for what they did it for, the Cavaliers. So, Caris LeVert, expiring contract, great guy. And did a really nice job. Even when he was struggling offensively, he never let it impact his defense. DeAndre Hunter's going to give you better wing defense, frankly, or at least he has this season, because he's, got size, athleticism. Caris had all those things. So, it's just DeAndre Hunter has been having a career year. George Niang, that's so hard to see him go. I mean, George's locker, to give you an idea, is right next to the entrance of the locker room. So after games, when I walk in the locker room, the first guy you see is George Niang. Usually, that's not a big deal in the NBA, right? You just keep walking past him. George doesn't let you walk past. He wants to start talking. There have been times where George has just started an interview and I wasn't even interviewing. I walk in the locker room and he's like, yeah, I think we played pretty well, and I'm like, oh, hang on, let me get out my tape recorder. You're starting the interview. I was just coming over to say hello. In fact, I was going to the locker next to you where Jalen Tyson sits because he had a big game. But since you're already talking, I might as well pretend that I'm going to use it in my story. And the emphasis is on pretend, because I don't think I've once quoted George Niang in my stories. So, but I mean, if you want to talk about, and I've said this on the show before, all the guys in that locker room, it's just been fantastic. It's been the most enjoyable experience I've had covering a team in 17 years, right? So I would say George was a big facilitator of that. We'd go over and interview Ty Jerome, who's always, just so professional and polite. And George, the first thing he'd do is he'd look over and he'd say, you guys always want to talk to Ty every game. So he's just, the best thing, and I'm not going to get into specifics, the Cavs often watch while they're, after their game, if they're in a good mood, they will hang out and get something to eat and stay in the locker room and watch another NBA game. There's a big TV in there where they, they're watching TNT or ESPN, and George would constantly rip opposing players. Nonstop. I'm sure I heard him rip Ben Simmons on there. So what would it be like if George is gone and Ben Simmons is a Cav? But yeah, that's all he did. He's like, oh, he can't make that shot. Yeah, George never stops. Never stops. You've seen him on the court, right? He's just talking to everybody. So the minivan is going to be missed. And that's that's really kind of the short version of it. He's been a fantastic guy to deal with. I've said there's no, without question, as soon as Atlanta Hawks George Niang jersey becomes available, I'll be getting it. He's one of the he's as regular of a guy on a team full of them that you'll find in the NBA. I mean, George played pig, was it horse, with our good friend of the show, Gab Cruz, and she recorded the whole thing. Was an NBA player playing horse with one of us, with a media person? I thought that was fantastic, and I just a regular guy, and he'll be missed. He'll definitely be missed in that locker room. It's going to be a lot quieter, you know. And Jared Allen said this the other night. We asked him before the trade deadline, do you want to make a trade? And he said, if you make a trade, it's going to disrupt the locker room. And it's gonna. It will. New guy, it's just like going to a new school. You're nervous. You got to fit in. The group looks cliquey to you. They've all been together. You're here because one of their friends is gone. Maybe two of their friends. I'm telling you, I've been in NBA locker rooms. I don't think it will disrupt this locker room. But it's not going to be, you know, DeAndre Hunter's going to be working to fit in. Now, granted, he's got the benefit. Ty Jerome's his best friend. I'm sure Ty Jerome's telling the other guys, no, man, he's cool. He's cool. You're going to love him. You know, and they're probably, it's Max Strus. What's Max Strus thinking? Are they bringing this guy in? Take my minutes? What's Isaac Okoro thinking? It's not. It takes time. I'm sure that most of the guys are thrilled. But it's going to take time to integrate all this. This is why they don't just throw them in the game at Washington. Because they're people. And they have real emotions. And that's going to be something to consider. It'll work out. Don't get me wrong. I'm not like, oh, this was a disaster. But it's going to take time. They could take a step back record-wise. You know? There are guys right now in that locker room, I can tell you right now, as much as they want DeAndre Hunter, they're really hurting. Because of George and Caris. Those were their brothers. You know? So, I hope to interview George, actually. And we have some... I don't know if I can get him on the show because of schedule. George, if I said, will you come on the show? He'd be like, oh, yeah, I'm all about it. Without question, I know that. I've already said something to him about it. But the difficulty is finding, you know, when we record the show, a lot of times they're practicing or it's just logistically a difficult thing to do. Believe it or not, NBA players also don't just sit around all day and be like, well, it's game time. Guess I'll show up. 7:30 tip. I'll get there at 7. I mean, this is kind of an all-day thing for them. And when they're not practicing or going through film sessions, they're usually napping. And those naps are very important. They're almost like kindergartners or preschoolers. It's like, okay, nap time, and please take it. You know, time to lay down, George. I wouldn't want to have that conversation. George is probably the guy who, I'm sure he would tell you, he's the guy fighting nap time. But anyway... So it's difficult to get them on the show during the season. During the off season, I think it's something that potentially is possible. George, Tristan, George. I've read all those comments. We're really going to miss George on that post-game show with Tristan. Cavaliers Live post-game, which, by the way, is usually followed by Full Court Cleveland with myself. Sometimes Booby Gibson. Booby was not on this week's show. I asked him, you know, Rafa said, what, are you too busy at the spa to come to the show, getting your nails done and all that? Because Booby was a presenter at the Greater Cleveland Sports Awards on Thursday night. And I was supposed to go to that. I was supposed to go and represent Full Court Cleveland. And I said, oh, it's NBA trade deadline day. I can't go. But you know what? You know why I didn't go? Because I've been twice. And I was mind-numbingly bored. Only here. That's exclusive information that hopefully my friends and bosses at Full Court Cleveland do not find out. Actually, I'm sure they understood. But I said, it's NBA trade deadline day. I can't go to that, even though it's like 6 hours after the trade deadline. I can't be bothered with that. I'm much too busy. But in reality, it's like, aside from the food and, probably sitting with Gab Cruz, a great friend, and some of my other good friends, and probably maybe even sitting with Booby himself, I just got, after the food, I'm like, okay, now what do we do? They're like, well, all these people are getting these awards and you're not one of them. And I was like, yeah, I've lost interest. Is this about me? No, I've lost interest. Okay. Anyway, so I guess that's our show for today. So much, look, Cavs fans, you already had a reason to be excited at 41-10. Even though the team didn't beat Boston in the last game in early February, which I thought, who cares? Now you have a reason. You got what you wanted, right? And what the Cavs, more importantly, what the Cavs needed. They needed a player like DeAndre Hunter. He was the perfect target, and they went out and they reeled him in. Could they use a backup big guy? Sure. Does the world end if they don't get one? No. Who cares? You want to get a little more depth. You have to understand there are only so many minutes to go around, okay? If you want a backup big guy for assurance, go out and get him. Go out and sign somebody. You're going to have to move Craig Porter Jr. down to the G League or something like that if you do that. Keep that in mind. How bad do you want a backup big guy? When they sign a backup big guy, don't complain and say, whoa, why'd they move Craig Porter Jr. down? He was playing well. You don't get 30 guys on a team. You've got to move parts. Do you want Jalen Tyson? People are like, well, now that LeVert's gone, will Tyson's minutes increase? No. They'll probably go down. You just got DeAndre Hunter. Some of these questions. I get it. I get it. You want everybody to play all 48 minutes. You want the Cavs to be able to play 20 guys 48 minutes. It doesn't work like that. If you sign a backup big guy, Jalen Tyson, Craig Porter Jr. are going to be G Leaguers probably for the rest of the year. Maybe the Cavs don't want that. Maybe they think we can get by. If Dean Wade's healthy, we can get by with these three bigs and Tristan. So, anyway, keep the questions coming. It's trade deadline week is over. I'm finally practiced good hygiene. Last night after the deadline, I started talking to my children again without yelling at them for asking if they can have a pop. I'm like, who are you to think you can have a soda? And now it's like, hey guys, drink all the pop you'd like. So I'm back in high spirits. Will be again until next year's trade deadline, and I think the Cavs, have done extremely well for themselves. Probably, other than the Lakers getting Luka Doncic for nothing, which is, if I'm the NBA, I would have investigated it, but whatever. I think that this was the best trade at the deadline, right here in Cleveland, or up there in Cleveland, right here in the 330 to go. So thanks so much for joining, and we will chat next time. Make sure you check out hoopswire.com, 330 to go on Facebook, which you're watching right now, and also on YouTube. So we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.